The evening air was thick with tension as Adisa walked back to the clearing. The bundle of herbs weighed heavy in his hand, though it wasn't its weight that troubled him. It was the unknown, the spirits, the Leopard King, and the test that awaited. As he entered the clearing, the massive Iroko tree stood as a silent sentinel. The talismans swayed gently in the night breeze, their faint jingling almost musical. Adisa knelt at the base of the tree and placed the herbs on the ground. He struck a flint stone, his hands shaking slightly. The small flame licked at the dried leaves, and soon a fragrant smoke began to rise. It curled upward, weaving itself into the branches of the Iroko tree. The air around him grew heavier, and the clearing seemed to vibrate with unseen energy. The smoke began to take form, twisting and swirling until it coalesced into the shape of a great leopard. Its eyes glowed like embers, and its voice was deep and resonant. "Keeper," it said, its tone neither welcoming nor hostile, "do you know why you have been chosen?" Adisa swallowed hard but met the creature's gaze. "I've been told it's to restore balance between man and spirit. But I don't understand how." The Leopard King prowled the edge of the clearing, its massive paw silent on the ground. "Restoring balance requires more than understanding. It demands sacrifice, courage, and the ability to see beyond yourself. Do you possess these qualities?" I don't know," Adisa admitted. The Leopard King paused, studying him. "Then we shall see." Suddenly, the forest around Adisa began to shift. The clearing dissolved, replaced by a dense jungle. The Iroko tree was gone, and Adisa found himself standing in a narrow pathway surrounded by towering trees. The Leopard King's voice echoed in his mind. "Your first test, Keeper, is to confront your fear. Follow the path and find the truth that lies within." Adisa hesitated, but the warmth of the pendant reassured him. He stepped forward, the jungle alive with sounds of rustling leaves and distant animal calls. The path twisted and turned, narrowing until it was barely wide enough for him to pass. Shadows danced around him, and he felt as though unseen eyes were watching. Then, he heard it, a low growl, deep and guttural. Ahead of him stood a hyena, its yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. Its fur was matted, and its teeth glinted as it bared them in a snarl. Adisa froze, his heart pounding. "You must confront your fear," the Leopard King's voice reminded him. Adisa looked around for a weapon but found none. He gripped the pendant, its heat spreading through his body like a coming wave. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, locking eyes with the hyena. "I am not afraid of you," he said, his voice trembling but steady. The hyena lunged, but as it did, the pendant blazed with light. The creature stopped mid-leap, its body dissolving into smoke. The jungle grew silent again, and the path ahead cleared. Adisa continued, his confidence growing. The jungle opened into another clearing, where a small stream flowed. At its edge sat a young girl, no older than Sword, weeping into her hands. "Who are you?" Adisa asked, stepping closer. The girl looked up, her face streaked with tears. "I am lost. Will you help me?" Adisa hesitated. He remembered the old man's warning, the spirits would test him. But the girl looked so helpless, her small frame shaking with sobs. "Where do you need to go?" he asked. "Across the stream," she said, pointing to the far bank. Adisa waded into the water, the current stronger than it appeared. He held out his hand, and the girl took it. Together, they crossed to the other side. As they stepped onto dry land, the girl's form shimmered, transforming into a glowing orb of light. "Kindness is a strength, Keeper," the orb said before vanishing into the night. The jungle shifted again, and Adisa found himself back in the clearing beneath the Iroko tree. The Leopard King stood before him, its gaze softer now. "You have passed the first test," it said. "Fear and kindness are but the beginning. Many trials lie ahead, but you have taken the first step toward becoming the keeper. Adisa bowed his head, the weight of the journey ahead pressing down on him. But for the first time, he felt a spark of hope. The village seemed quieter when Adisa returned, as if the air itself carried the weight of his experiences. The elders awaited him in the central square, their eyes glinting with curiosity and expectation. Sod was among the onlookers, her face lit with hope and concern. Adisa stood before the council, the warmth of the pendant still lingering against his chest. "I have passed the Leopard King's test," he declared, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. Elder Duro nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then you have begun the journey, keeper. But the Leopard King's approval is only the beginning. The spirits themselves must recognize you as their bridge to the human world. Tonight, they will come to you." That night, Adisa sat alone in his hut, the pendant glowing faintly in the darkness. The soft light filled the room, casting shifting patterns on the walls. His mind raced with questions. Would the spirits be as fearsome as the Leopard King? What would they demand of him? The air grew colder, and the flickering flame of his lantern stilled. A faint murmur began to fill the room, like voices carried on the wind. Adisa's heart raced, but he sat upright, gripping the pendant tightly. The murmurs grew louder until the first spirit appeared. It was a woman, her form translucent, dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like water under moonlight. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. "I am Umi," she said, her voice like the bubbling of a stream. "I am the spirit of the river. For generations, your people have taken from me without offering gratitude. If you are to be keeper, you must prove your respect for what I provide." Adisa bowed his head. "How do I prove this?" "You must return what was stolen," Omi replied. "In the deepest part of my river lies an object taken by greed. Retrieve it, and I will know your sincerity." Before he could respond, Omi dissolved into mist. Adisa made his way to the river, guided by the pendant's glow. The water glimmered under the moonlight, its surface unevenly still. He stepped into the river, the icy water biting at his skin. The current was stronger than before, and Adisa struggled to stay upright as he waded deeper. His feet touched something sharp and solid, a stone covered in moss. Beneath it, he felt the cold edges of a metal object. He reached down, his fingers closing around a heavy bracelet etched with intricate designs. The current suddenly surged, and Adisa lost his footing. He gasped for air as the river pulled him under, his vision darkening. The pendant flared, and a warmth spread through his chest. The current calmed, and Adisa found himself lying on the riverbank, clutching the bracelet. Back in his hut, another spirit awaited him. This one was taller than any man, its body composed of swirling ash and embers. Its eyes burned like fire, and its presence filled the room with an oppressive heat. "I am Aina," the spirit said, its voice crackling like flames. "You have satisfied Omi, but fire is less forgiving. I test not your respect, but your resolve. Will you endure the flames to protect what you hold dear?" Before Adisa could respond, Aina raised a hand. A ring of fire sprung up around Adisa, its heat licking at his skin. The flames closed in, and Adisa's vision blurred with heat and smoke. His instinct screamed at him to run, but he gritted his teeth and stayed still. "I will endure," he said aloud, clutching the pendant. The flames receded, and the spirit's form dimmed. Resolve alone is not enough, keeper, but it is a start. With that, Aina vanished. By the time the third spirit appeared, Adisa was drained. This one was smaller, barely taller than a child. Its form shimmered with a faint golden light, and its voice was soft and melodic. "I am you," it said. "The spirit of the forest. My test is simple: will you choose preservation over destruction? Even when it cost you dearly." You extended a small branch, its leaves lush and green. Take this to the elder who claims it was his tree I inhabit. Convince him to let me grow once more. Adisa nodded, though his heart sank. Elder Oba was known for his stubbornness, and the wood of the tree was prized in the village for its strength. The next morning, Adisa stood before Elder Oba, the branch extended before him. This branch belongs to the spirit of the tree you felled, Adisa said. It asks to grow once more. Elder Oba frowned, his massive frame imposing. That tree provided for my family. What spirit would ask such a thing when we rely on its wood to live? Adisa clenched his fist. It is not just the tree's life, but the balance it represents. If it is allowed to grow, it will provide for the village in other ways, shade, fruit, and the stability of the soil. If it remains cut down, the land will eventually wither. The elder studied him for a long moment before nodding. You speak with the wisdom of someone beyond your years, boy. The tree will grow again. That night, the three spirits returned to Adisa. You have proven yourself worthy of our guidance, Omi said. Your resolve has been tested and found strong, added Aina. And your choices reflect the preservation of harmony, said you. Adisa bowed deeply. I am grateful for your trust. What comes next? The Leopard King's voice echoed from the shadows. The keeper must now unite the spirits. The balance is still fragile, and danger looms on the horizon. Adisa felt the weight of their words, but he stood tall. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Word of Adisa's trial spread quickly through the village, and the people looked to him with newfound respect and curiosity. Despite this, Adisa felt the growing tension in the air. The spirit's words echoed in his mind, danger looms on the horizon. Elder Duro summoned Adisa to a private meeting in the sacred grove, a hidden sanctuary where the elders communed with the unseen forces. The grove was alive with the hum of nature, and the air smelled of earth and rain. You have done well, Keeper, Elder Duro began, his voice steady. But the balance is still fragile. The spirits have spoken of an ancient force, one that seeks to disrupt the harmony between their realm and ours. Adisa frowned. What kind of force? The spirits called it Ajogan, Duro replied, his tone grave. It is a malevolent entity that thrives on chaos and destruction. It was sealed away centuries ago, but recent events have weakened its prison. If it escapes, it will bring ruin to both our world and the spirit realm. That night, Adisa sat by the river, the pendant glowing faintly around his neck. He thought of the trials he had faced and the responsibilities that now rested on his shoulders. He longed to speak with his late father, to ask how he had carried the same burden. As if in answer to his thoughts, the water rippled, and Omi's form emerged. You carry the weight of many worlds, Keeper, she said, her voice soft but firm. But you do not carry it alone. Adisa looked up. The elders mentioned Ajogan. How do I stop it? The spirits will guide you, Omi replied. But remember, balance is not about strength alone. It is about understanding. You must seek allies, both human and spirit. The next day, Adisi visited Sod. She had been his closest friend, and he knew her sharp mind and resourcefulness could help. You want me to help you fight a spirit? Sod asked, raising an eyebrow. Not fight, Adisi corrected. Understand. The spirits keep telling me balance is key. I can't do this alone, Sod. Sod sighed, her eyes softening. You've always had a way of pulling me into your adventures, Adisa. Fine. What do we do first? Adisa smiled. We start by learning everything we can about Ajogan. The elders' stories, old carvings, anything. Their search led them to the village archives, a dusty collection of scrolls, carvings, and artifacts stored in the elders' hall. For hours, Adisa and Sod pored over the materials, piecing together fragments of Ajogan's story. They learned that Ajogan was once a spirit of justice, tasked with punishing those who upset the balance. But centuries of misuse and human greed had corrupted it, turning it into a force of vengeance. The spirits and an ancient keeper had sealed it within a stone tablet, hidden in a remote cave. "The tablet seal is weakening," Sod said, her voice hushed. "If it breaks completely." Adisa nodded grimly. "We need to find it before it does." Elder Duro provided them with the location of the cave, deep within the forbidden forest, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. Few dared to enter, for it was said to be the domain of wandering spirits and untamed forces. Adisa and Sod prepared for the journey, gathering supplies and offering prayers at the village shrine. As they set out, the villagers watched silently, their faces a mix of hope and fear. The forest was alive with sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and the occasional whisper of unseen forces. Adisa felt the pendant grow warmer as they ventured deeper, as if guiding them toward their destination. Hours turned into days, and the journey tested their endurance. They encountered challenges: a swarm of spirit bees guarding an ancient tree, a maze of thorny vines that seemed to move of their own accord, and the eerie call of phantom voices that tried to lure them off their path. Each time, Adisa relied on the pendant and the lessons from his trials to navigate the dangers. Soda's quick thinking and determination proved invaluable, and together, they forged ahead. Finally, they reached the cave. It was carved into the side of a massive rock formation, its entrance framed by twisted roots and glowing symbols. The air was heavy with an oppressive energy, and Adisa felt a chill run down his spine. "This is it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sod nodded, her expression determined. "Let's finish this." As they stepped into the cave, the pendant flared brightly, illuminating the darkness. Shadows danced on the walls, and the faint sound of drums echoed in the distance. In the center of the cave stood the tablet, its surface etched with ancient markings that pulsed with a faint red light. Cracks spiderwebbed across it, and a dark mist seeped from the fissures. "Ajogan," Adisa whispered, feeling the malevolent presence. The ground shook, and the mist coalesced into a towering figure, its form shifting and menacing. Its voice echoed like thunder. "You dare disturb me, Keeper," it growled. "You are but a child, unworthy of this fight." Adisa stood his ground, clutching the pendant. "I may be young, but I carry the strength of those who came before me. You will not break the balance." The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Then let us see if your resolve is enough." The cave darkened, and the battle began. Stay tuned for next part of the story. I don't want to bore you with lengthy video, but I promise that the next part is going to be a roller coaster. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you.